Hello guys, welcome back to Not Just Mecha, it's Marco here, and today I'll show you an interesting tool for oil painting that you can build by yourself.
We happy? Vincent? We happy?
We are happy. What is this? This is an homemade oven for oil paints, also known as heated drying box. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button to always know what happens on the channel. And if you want to support my work, check my Patreon page and join the community. With obviously different sizes and proportions, this is something used by canvas painters to speed up the drying time of oil paints, but as you can see here, it can be easily adapted to our medium. Before moving to the actual build, I want to clarify a bit of oil paint science, so you can understand how and why the box works and how to obtain the maximum from its use. Acrylics and watercolors, as part of their medium, have inside a lot of water, and they dry by evaporation. Water and solvents simply dissipates out of the paint and into the air, leaving dry pigments bound to a solid acrylic resin, for example. In oil paints, the pigments are dispersed in oil. There isn't any water to evaporate, and oil doesn't evaporate. Not all the oils are the same, and oil paints require an oil that hardens, forming a stable, waterproof film. These oils are called causative or drying oils. They dry by what's called a siccative quality, drying semi-solid through an oxidation process, when the oil reacts with oxygen, basically absorbing it from the air. The pigments are dispersed in oil, and that same oil that in this case we consider a medium can be also used as thinner for large and superfluid applications. But this is not extremely useful for miniatures, where we usually need a quick drying time. For us, the useful thing is that oils can be dissolved in a solvent like white spirit, and that solvent quickly evaporates away when the paint dries, like water, leaving pigments and oil behind. So we can minimize the use of slow-drying oil, adding a solvent that evaporates quickly to obtain dilution and fluidity. The box works on all these components in different ways. First, the heat from the light bulb acts on white spirit, speeding up its evaporation. When you see me use the blow dryer in the videos, it's because I want to get rid of the solvent quickly. When white spirit is out of the equation, the heat and UV radiation attack the oil. Oil, again, doesn't evaporate, but its oxidation, like any other chemical reaction, becomes quicker when you add heat and new sources of energy into the system. That's why you can use the box also to speed up milliput or green stuff hardening times. As a bonus, the paint dries more matte, and this is true for all the paints. Any kind of fast drying process causes some kind of shrinkage. That can be too quick and extreme, creating cracks, or simply altering the microscopic structure of the paint, and how it catches and bounces light. That changes from something like this to something like this. Long story short, the paint dries faster, but now you know why. I gave my wife a list of things I need, and she came home with this. Something that could have come out of Cardcaptor Sakura. She argued that everything in the list is actually in the lamp, and I didn't know how to reply. I meant more something like this: electric wires, light bulb socket, and plug. We'll talk about times, light bulbs, and a great trick to control their power at the end of the build. I have to admit that the lamp has a nice long cable with already a switch, and I really can use it. At the end, she was right. First, I want to test the electrical part of the build. Everything is extremely simple and straightforward, but you never know. I start disassembling the bottom of the lamp. I don't want to cut this nice cable and its cover, and the wiring is made by two parts connected here in the base, so I can save its entire length. I peel the two cables and I connect them to the light bulb socket. I never work on this kind of socket. We don't have any bayonet mounts in Italy, but the connectors inside the socket work always in the same way. This mount has also its own switch, so I'll have two of them along the circuit. That's a nice feature. Be careful when working with electricity, and obviously keep everything unplugged while working. The moment of truth. I immediately forgot the second switch. Yeah, it works! Later, I'll assemble everything again in a prettier, safer and more stable way in its final position. Time to work on the box. I would have preferred something larger to have the space for big figures and monsters, and a better air circulation, but this can still work well for standard miniatures. In general, the best boxes are the ones you get with good quality wines, the ones with the sliding lid. I don't have a ton of space, so the whole socket will live outside the box, with only the light bulb inside. I want to be able to fully open the lid, so I want the light on the other side. The light bulb has to keep some space all around, without touching the walls, for safety and a better heat diffusion. I eyeball its position in the Z-axis and I mark the spot. On the side, I can use the full depth of the box and the lid, so I simply mark the center. The socket has a final diameter of 3.5mm. And it's not a cylinder, but a cone, so the plan is to pressure fit this block in the wall of the box, with an hole 1 or 2mm smaller than the final diameter. Using this diameter, the circumference hits the edge, so I have to move everything a few millimeters away from it, if I want to avoid a massive loss of structural strength and an ugly result. At least in the depth, I have all the space I need. Sadly, at the moment I don't have a coping saw, or the right drill bit to do this all properly, so you'll have to watch me do this in the ugly way. I try to maintain a bit of professionalism using masking tape in the area I want to drill, to minimize stress, damages and chippings. Again, this is probably one of the worst ways to cut a circle. But you can't have always all the perfect tools you need for a project, and sometimes you have simply to adapt and improvise. Luckily, this is a very, very light plywood that I can easily refine with files and even cutters later. Plus, this build can sustain this kind of loose tolerance, and I can live with that. I invested a bit of time refining the result, and this is the best I can do. It's not a circle, but no one can deny that this is a hole. At the end, the important thing is that it's able to hold the socket. And thanks to the smaller measurements I set from the beginning, the fit is quite tight, even with this slightly irregular shape. And it has all the stability this thin wood can offer. If needed, I can add extra solidity with a bit of super glue, or even a collar of milliput. They both work extremely well with mixed materials and heat. We are almost there. I need only to increase the ability of the box to retain and evenly distribute the heat. This is not extremely important in a little box like this one, but it's very useful creating a bigger box where the heat will be less uniform in the larger volume. I use simple tin foil for the job, and if you want to minimize the stress of this super tedious step, I suggest you to use a thick, strong tin foil, the kind with the hexagon pattern. This will make its behavior more similar to paper, and you can cut precise lines with a sharp blade, avoiding wrinkles and folds. I add 1 cm to all my measurements to have extra material that can wrap the corners. This is more an aesthetic thing, but it will also add extra strength around the edges. I cut a relief in the corners to be able to bend the frame, and I use 2 rulers to fold the material in a precise straight line. This step takes some time and patience, but this is the kind of tool you build just one time in your life, so it's better to invest extra efforts now and be forever happy with the result. I apply a thin coat of concentrated PVA glue, and here you can see the rewards of a bit of OCD applied to planning and measuring. Fits like a glove. Then it's all a matter of repetition. Now I can connect the electrical components in their final position. And here is the result. I just added a bit of super glue around the socket to stabilize the movement created by the weight of the cable.
Let's talk about light bulbs. Traditionally, incandescent light bulbs were used to create the heat inside the box, but they don't exist anymore.
As a rule of thumb, I use the energy efficiency chart to choose my light. Bulbs with a worse score are bulbs that lose a lot of energy through heat, so bad for the electricity bill and the environment, but good for a miniature oven. Usually, halogen bulbs are the best for this job.
Quantifying the heat you need is not easy, and it depends on the models you work with. metal figures don't fear the heat, and oil painters often use the real kitchen oven for them, usually 15 minutes at 120 degrees Celsius. Yeah, that's a lot of heat. You have to be careful with plastic and simply avoid to use the box with resin models. They are just too sensible to heat. Since I want a universal box, able to handle any kind of model, I chose a powerful 80 watts halogen bulb. That's also dimmable, and I add a dimmer to the system to be able to change the intensity of the light, and consequently the heat emitted, to cover the full spectrum of possibilities. If you paint only plastic, you can use a light bulb with a better energy saving score and a lower power, but I suggest you to use the dimmer anyway to better control the output. Finding the right heat to use on plastic is an empiric process that depends on so many factors that it's impossible to give you precise numbers. But you can easily make some experiments with sprues and bits, starting obviously from the lowest setting of the dimmer. Again, we just want to introduce extra energy into the system. Doesn't matter if it comes with a smaller power over time ratio. In my case, this is where I want to set my dimmer for a plastic infantry model, and I leave it inside only for short periods of 15-20 minutes. Between layers and steps, we just need the oils to be dry to the touch. And with the thin layers we usually use, it's a matter of minutes. So you can work on everything quickly, even with acrylics. I hope you like this build, and I can't wait to see your boxes. It can be a situational tool for any work with putties, solvents and different paints, but if you work a lot with oils, or even better with an oil and acrylic mixed approach, the drying box can really be a game changer. If you like this video, give it a like and subscribe. Don't forget that you can ask me anything down below with a comment, and you can follow my projects during the week using one of my socials. And if you want to support the channel and my work, check my Patreon page and join the community, or maybe ask for a commission. See you next week, guys!